Hello everyone and welcome back to the finals of the Speed Chess Championship that was played yesterday. This is the final game of their match, Maxime Vachier Lagrave versus Magnus Carlsen, and in the 5+1 section Maxime took the lead. Then in the 3+1 section Maxime was also leading by a 2-point margin, and now we entered the bullet section where interestingly this is the last game of the match, and Magnus has won 3 of the previous games, and now Magnus needs one more win to get back into the match. So if he's able to do it, then we have a match again. If not, then it's Maxime in the finals against Hikaru. And as you can see, Hikaru already made his prediction in an interview after defeating Wesley. So he said that certainly playing Magnus again will be fun, and I'm looking forward to it, foreshadowing that Magnus will win the semi-final. So let's see what happened, as this is quite the game. So it's again 1+1, not the actual bullet, and for these fine gentlemen, that's, like I already said, that's infinite time. So Maxime opens with the white pieces and he goes for e4. We have g6 by Magnus, trying to mix it up, going for the modern defense. d4, bishop to g7, and now knight to c3, and d6. So the setup of the modern defense, also known as the Robatsch defense. Knight to f3 by Maxime, and now a6 by Magnus. We have bishop to e3, and now b5. Preparing to fianchetto this light square bishop along this diagonal. We have bishop to d3, so just perfectly natural developing moves, such as, for example, Paul Morphy would do. Knight to d7, and now castles by Maxime. And here Magnus strikes in the center with c5. We have d captures on c5, and now there is one game in the database where knight captures on c5 was played, but here we have d captures on c5, and it's as of move 8 that we have a completely new game. So here we have e5, just advancing the pawn in the center, not allowing black to push e5 himself, blocks the dark square bishop, and now makes room for black to use this diagonal. So this is Carlsen's next move, bishop to b7, and now e6. And already it's quite a dangerous position for Magnus. He needs to do something about this. If he moves the knight, then he allows e captures on f7. So he captures on f6, and now comes knight to g5 by Maxime, going after this pawn. If you allow this, it's just game over, because the queen and the bishop will be under attack, so you're going to lose material here. So Magnus forced to give up his very strong dark square bishop with bishop captures. You could also play knight to f8, which is kind of passive, as you kind of don't want to bring your pieces back into the defense. So bishop captures on c3, b captures, and now queen to b6, defending the e6 pawn with the queen. So c4, not allowing Magnus to make use of this position here, as at some point you want to move the queen to c6, you want to play c5, c4, and so on. So here knight g to f6, Magnus continues development, and now a4, with now a triple attack on the b5 pawn, so Magnus needs to react to this. You could capture, Magnus decides to push b4 instead, and now queen to e2, developing the queen and connecting rooks. Knight to e5 by Magnus, and now bishop to f4, opening up a double attack on the knight here, and Magnus just ignores it. He goes queen to c6, and now of course you could capture the knight, but if you did that, then you'd get queen captures on g2, checkmate. So I hope none of you were considering that. So here Maxime just blocks the queen bishop attack with f3. Now there's not much point in keeping the queen and bishop on this diagonal. And now knight captures on d3, as the knight was attacked twice. We have c captures, fixing the pawn structure. And now bishop back to c8. Magnus needs to now figure out a way how to defend this e6 pawn. So he plays the... usually it would be a passive move, bishop to c8, but since the bishop wasn't doing all that much on this diagonal, it could actually be a better position for the bishop. So rook f to e1, adding a third attacker to the e6 pawn, and here Magnus just goes to h6. And here what Magnus is doing is he's offering the e6 pawn to go in straight into an endgame. For example, if knight captures, queen captures, we'd have captures, captures, and captures, and then, for example, g5 or king to f7 goes into an endgame with both players having 2 rooks and a piece and 6 pawns. Maxime not interested in putting the faith of the match in the hands of his endgame skill, so he prefers to keep it complicated. Knight to h3, and now g5, pushing back the bishop to e5, and now as the knight is pinned, first rook to f8, unpinning. knight to f2, the knight can now come to e4 or g4, and now a5 by Magnus. And here striking in the center with d4. Magnus captures, we have bishop captures, and now bishop to a6. So again, bishop finds a useful diagonal with a double attack on the c4 pawn, and Maxime just defends it. Rook a to d1, and here Magnus goes for rook to d8. There's always this idea of going g4 because well, you definitely want to open lines towards the white king. But Magnus first goes rook a to d8, puts pressure on the bishop. And now, again, bishop captures, rook captures seems like a reasonable thing to do, but it's as if Maxime just wants to keep as many pieces on the board. He doesn't want to give Magnus even the opportunity of trading down. And again, after bishop to a1, we have this option of g4, which is constantly in the position, but Magnus still ignores it. He first plays king to f7, wants to connect rooks to get his king to safety. And now knight to d3. The threat, of course, is knight to e5 check, which would win the queen. So king to g8, and now again knight to e5, attacking Carlsen's queen. Queen to c5 with check, and king to h1. And now comes knight to h5, and it's a very complicated position, especially when you're low on time. Magnus was much lower on time here already than Maxime, and it's very hard for white to make any mistakes here. Yes, there are some tricks in the position, but it would take like 3 really bad moves for white to even make use of this. I don't know, we could try like something like queen f1, let's say rook to f4, with ideas of shifting rook to h4, and then another silly move like rook c to d1. Let's say rook h4, and now let's say you do something like rook captures on d8, king to h7, and now we need another bad move because queen to d3 just will end the game quickly. So we need something like knight to g4, for example, and then we could deliver knight to g3 checkmate with the queen covering g1 and the pawn being pinned here. So there are some tricks in the position, but they are incredibly difficult to pull off, as white's position is very, very good here. So here we have knight to g6 by Maxime, attacking the rook, putting pressure on e7. Of course, queen captures on e6, again a threat. So rook to f7, defending against that, and now queen captures on e6. And now not a lot to do here for Magnus. He offers a queen trade, and just trading queens would actually be okay for black. Magnus would be very happy playing this endgame. However, Maxime goes for the absolute strongest. Knight captures on e7 with check. And now, what do you do here? Well, here we have queen captures on e8 with check. So what would you play here? Feel free to pause the video and find a best move for Maxime while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting the very sneaky queen g6 check, opening up an attack towards Carlsen's queen, while also if rook to g7 attacking Maxime's queen, you just pick up the free knight. The queen is still under attack, you have to move it, and you're up a piece, enjoying a great position. However, Maxime did not go for this, as you know, even though that's a better position and objectively you are winning in a bullet game where the time is really low, you don't want to keep too many pieces on the board, especially queens. So here Maxime just trades. Queen captures on e7, we have rook captures on e7, rook captures, and now knight to f4 by Magnus. And here rook to a7, attacking the bishop. And here Magnus was already extremely low on time. Yes, you constantly get a 1 second increment when you make a move, but that means you have to constantly be making moves you know, faster than 1 second passes. So here Magnus quickly grabbed the pawn, which makes sense, as if you capture on c4, then Magnus delivers rook to d1 checkmate. The king has nowhere to go, but Maxime is not to be tricked by such ideas. Maxime just captured the a5 pawn, created an a4 pawn for himself, and Magnus was down to some 3 seconds on the clock here. And even though there's still a lot of play here, you know, anything could still happen here, with Maxime being of course much better, but here those 3 seconds elapsed and Magnus lost the game. So that was really, really intense stuff. It was really close, as Magnus won the previous 3 games. He needed this one, but Maxime just played a brilliant game with the white pieces, completely crushed him, and there was just no way back. So at the end, the score was 13-11, and that's just it. So before I forget, here is the, let me just check if I have it. Yeah, I do have it. Here is the bracket for the finals. There you have it. Nakamura will face MVL. Sorry about that. there we go. Nakamura will face MVL in the finals, and it's gonna happen today, so we're gonna cover those games as well. It's gonna be pretty crazy, and yeah, so not much more to be said about this. Like I said, Hikaru didn't really predict well who would win this, as it's actually Maxime who won this, but sorry about that. Sorry, it's not the mailman or the pizza guy, it's actually Jelena. So rook captures on a5, ends the game, and yeah, it was pretty crazy stuff. Maxime went into the bullet section with a 2-point margin lead, and Magnus was unable to catch up to this, even with winning the previous 3 games. So completely deserving win against the world champion in all-time formats, Magnus Carlsen, and we'll see how Maxime does in the finals against Hikaru Nakamura. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank John Malpass, Prakshar Virkar, Damian Yordanov, Peter Corden, and Scott Meyer for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Morphy saga, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and whatever else happens in the chess world, such as the finals today. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your weekend.